the heart of West Virginia, nestled among the rolling Appalachian Mountains, lay the small town of Maplewood. It was a place where everyone knew their neighbors, where the pace of life moved a little slower, and where the bonds of community were as strong as the ancient oaks that lined the streets. But even in this close-knit town, there were divisions, invisible lines drawn by history, economics, and the color of one's skin. It was on a crisp autumn morning that 8-year-old Amelia Johnson set out for school, her backpack filled with books and her lunchbox clutched tightly in her small hands. Amelia was a bright-eyed child with deep brown skin and a smile that could light up a room. Her mother, Tanya Johnson, watched from the porch as Amelia skipped down the sidewalk, her braids bouncing with each step. Tanya couldn't help but feel a mixture of pride and concern as she watched her daughter disappear around the corner. Pride in Amelia's kind heart and curious mind, and concern for the challenges she might face in a world that wasn't always kind to little girls who looked like her. With a sigh, Tanya turned and headed back inside, preparing for another long day at the diner where she worked. As Amelia made her way to school, she couldn't help but notice the man sitting on the bench near the park. He was there most days, his clothes tattered and his beard unkempt. Some of the other kids would cross the street to avoid him, but Amelia always smiled and waved. Today, though, something was different. The man looked sadder than usual, his shoulders slumped and his eyes fixed on the ground. Without hesitation, Amelia approached the bench. The man looked up, startled by her presence. His blue eyes were weary, but there was a flicker of warmth as he saw the little girl's smile. Amelia reached into her lunchbox and pulled out her sandwich, peanut butter and jelly, her favorite. Without a word, she held it out to the man. The man's eyes widened in surprise, then filled with tears. He hesitated for a moment before slowly reaching out to take the sandwich. Amelia's smile grew even brighter as she watched him take a small bite. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The simple act of kindness spoke volumes. As Amelia continued on her way to school, she felt a warmth in her chest. She didn't know the man's name or his story, but she knew that sometimes a small act of kindness could make a big difference. Little did she know just how big a difference her simple gesture would make. The school day passed in a blur of lessons and laughter. Amelia loved learning, soaking up knowledge like a sponge. Her teacher, Miss Thompson, often remarked on Amelia's curiosity and her eagerness to help others. As the final bell rang, Amelia gathered her things and headed home, her mind already on the homework she had to do and the stories she wanted to read. Meanwhile, across town, Officer Michael Baker was just starting his shift at the Maplewood Police Department. Baker was a veteran cop, his face weathered by years on the job and his eyes sharp with experience. As he settled into his patrol car, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about today. Baker's partner, Officer Sarah Chen, slid into the passenger seat. Chen was newer to the force, her enthusiasm and idealism still intact despite the challenges of the job. As they began their patrol, Chen chatted about the latest community outreach programs she wanted to implement. Baker listened with half an ear, his mind still nagged by that odd feeling. As they drove through the streets of Maplewood, Baker's eyes were drawn to a figure stumbling along the sidewalk. It was the homeless man who usually sat on the bench near the park. But today he was moving with purpose, his steps unsteady but determined. Baker pulled the car over, watching as the man made his way towards a modest house at the end of the street. Something about the scene set Baker's instincts on edge. He motioned for Chen to stay in the car as he got out to investigate. As Baker approached, he saw the man reach into his tattered coat and pull something out. Baker's hand instinctively went to his holster, years of training kicking in. But what the man produced wasn't a weapon. It was a small, colorful lunchbox. The man placed the lunchbox carefully on the porch of the house, then turned and shuffled away. Baker watched, perplexed, as the man disappeared around the corner. Curiosity overcoming caution, Baker approached the house and examined the lunchbox. It was decorated with cartoon characters, clearly belonging to a child. Inside, Baker found a handwritten note, the letters shaky but legible. "Thank you for the sandwich. God bless you, little angel." Baker felt a lump form in his throat as he realized what he had just witnessed. an act of gratitude from someone who had so little to give. As Baker returned to the patrol car, his mind was racing. He recounted what he had seen to Chen, who listened with growing amazement. Together, they decided to investigate further. They needed to understand the story behind this simple, yet profound gesture. The next day, as Amelia prepared for school, she was surprised to hear a knock at the door. Tanya answered, her expression a mixture of confusion and concern as she saw the two police officers standing on her porch. Amelia peeked around her mother's legs, her eyes wide with curiosity and a hint of fear. Officer Baker knelt down to Amelia's level, his voice gentle as he explained why they were there. He told her about the homeless man and the returned lunchbox. Watching as understanding and then joy spread across her face. Amelia's simple act of kindness had touched the man so deeply that he had gone out of his way to return her lunchbox and express his gratitude. Tanya listened to the story with growing emotion, tears welling up in her eyes as she realized the impact her daughter's actions had made. She had always taught Amelia to be kind, but to see that kindness recognized and returned in such a way was overwhelming. As the officers prepared to leave, Baker paused. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small badge, a junior police officer sticker. With a smile, he handed it to Amelia, telling her that her kindness and compassion were exactly what the world needed more of. The story of Amelia's sandwich and the homeless man's gratitude spread quickly through Maplewood. It was a spark that ignited something in the community. A reminder of the power of simple acts of kindness and the connections that bind us all together, regardless of our differences. In the days that followed, the community of Maplewood began to change. People started to look at each other differently, to smile more at strangers, to reach out to those in need. The invisible lines that had divided the town began to blur and fade. At the local diner where Tanya worked, customers began leaving larger tips, often with notes expressing their appreciation for her hard work. The owner, moved by the changing atmosphere, decided to start a pay-it-forward program where customers could buy meals for those who couldn't afford them. At Amelia's school, Miss Thompson used the story as a teachable moment, encouraging her students to think about ways they could show kindness in their daily lives. The children embraced the idea with enthusiasm, starting a kindness club that organized various community service projects. Even at the police station, things were changing. Officer Chen's community outreach ideas, once met with skepticism, were now being implemented with full support. Officer Baker found himself approaching his job with renewed purpose, focusing more on serving and protecting in the truest sense of the words. The homeless man, whose name they learned was Robert, became a symbol of the town's transformation. No longer ignored or avoided, he was now greeted with smiles and offers of help. A local shelter reached out to him, providing not just a place to stay, but also resources to help him get back on his feet. As for Amelia, she continued to spread her kindness wherever she went. Her simple act had created a ripple effect that touched countless lives, reminding everyone of the power of compassion and the importance of seeing the humanity in every person. Weeks turned into months, and the changes in Maplewood continued to grow and deepen. The town that had once been divided was now coming together in ways no one could have imagined. Community events became more inclusive, with people from all walks of life coming together to celebrate their shared humanity. One crisp Saturday morning, the town gathered for the first annual Maplewood Kindness Festival. The park where Robert had once sat alone was now filled with laughter and music. Food stands offered a variety of cuisines, representing the diverse backgrounds of the townspeople. Children ran and played, their faces painted with colorful designs. Adults chatted and mingled, old barriers forgotten in the spirit of community. Amelia and her mother walked through the festival, hand in hand. Tanya couldn't help but marvel at the changes she had seen in her town, all sparked by her daughter's simple act of kindness. As they passed by the bench where Robert had once sat, they saw a small plaque had been installed. It read, "Kindness begins with one small act. Thank you, Amelia." Amelia's eyes widened as she read the plaque, a mix of surprise and joy spreading across her face. Tanya knelt down beside her daughter, wrapping her in a tight hug. She whispered words of pride and love, reminding Amelia that she had the power to change the world, one small act at a time. As they continued through the festival, they came across Officer Baker and Officer Chen, who were manning a booth about community policing. The officers greeted Amelia warmly, asking her about school and her latest acts of kindness. Baker couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed since that day he had witnessed Robert returning the lunchbox. Nearby, Miss Thompson was helping to run a booth where children could make cards and care packages for residents of the local nursing home. She waved to Amelia, her face beaming with pride at her star pupil. The kindness club Amelia had inspired was now one of the most popular activities at the school, with students eagerly participating in various community service projects. As the day wore on, the festival reached its highlight, a community meal where everyone sat down to eat together. Long tables had been set up in the park, covered with checkered tablecloths and decorated with wildflowers. People from all parts of town, all walks of life, sat side by side, sharing food and conversation. Amelia found herself seated next to Robert, who had become something of a local celebrity. He was clean-shaven now, dressed in new clothes, his eyes bright with newfound hope. As they ate, Robert shared stories of his life, of the hardships he had faced and the kindness that had helped him overcome them. Amelia listened intently, her young mind opening to the complexities of the world and the power of compassion. As the meal came to an end, the mayor of Maplewood stood up to give a speech. He spoke of the changes that had swept through the town, of the barriers that had been broken down, and of the sense of community that had been rekindled. And at the heart of it all, he said, was the simple act of a little girl sharing her sandwich. The mayor called Amelia up to the front, presenting her with a special award for outstanding citizenship. As Amelia stood there, looking out at the sea of faces, faces of all colors, all ages, all backgrounds, she felt a sense of awe. She hadn't set out to change the world. She had simply wanted to help someone who looked hungry. But in doing so, she had started a movement. As the sun began to set on the festival, casting a warm glow over the park, there was a sense of contentment in the air. People lingered, reluctant to let the day end, savoring the feeling of connection and community. Promises were made to keep in touch, to continue the work of bringing the town together. In the weeks and months that followed, the spirit of the Kindness Festival continued to permeate life in Maplewood. The town became known throughout the state as a model of community engagement and social progress. Visitors would often remark on the warm welcome they received, the sense of inclusivity that seemed to touch every aspect of life in Maplewood. For Amelia, life continued much as it had before. She went to school, played with her friends, and continued to spread kindness wherever she went. But there was a new awareness in her now, an understanding of the impact that small actions could have. She took her role as a junior police officer seriously, always looking for ways to help others and make her community a better place. Tanya watched her daughter grow with a mixture of pride and wonder. She had always known Amelia was special, but she never could have imagined the impact her little girl would have on their town. As she worked her shifts at the diner, she would often overhear conversations about the positive changes in Maplewood, and she would smile to herself, knowing that her daughter had played a part in making it happen. At the police station, Officers Baker and Chen found their jobs transforming. Instead of just responding to crimes, they were now actively involved in community building. They organized youth programs, started a mentorship initiative, and worked to build trust between the police force and the community they served. Baker, once cynical after years on the force, found himself renewed by the positive changes he was seeing. Miss Thompson's classroom became a hub of creativity and compassion. The Kindness Club expanded its activities, partnering with local organizations to make a difference in the community. Students who had once been shy or isolated found themselves welcomed and included, the spirit of kindness fostering a sense of belonging among all the children. Robert, with the support of the community, continued to make strides in rebuilding his life. He found a job at a local landscaping company, moved into a small apartment, and became an active volunteer at the shelter that had once helped him. He often spoke to groups about his experiences, sharing his story as a testament to the power of kindness and community support. As the one-year anniversary of Amelia's sandwich sharing approached, the town decided to commemorate the event. They declared it Kindness Day, encouraging everyone to perform acts of kindness and to reflect on the positive changes that had occurred over the past year. On that day, Amelia and her mother retraced the steps of that fateful morning. They walked to the bench where Robert had once sat, now a symbol of the town's transformation. A small ceremony was held there, with town officials, community members, and media in attendance. As Amelia stood by the bench, holding her mother's hand, she looked out at the gathered crowd. She saw familiar faces: Officer Baker and Officer Chen, Miss Thompson and her classmates, Robert and many others whose lives had been touched by the ripple effect of her simple act of kindness. The mayor spoke again, reflecting on the journey the town had taken. He talked about how a single act of compassion had sparked a movement, how it had reminded everyone of their shared humanity and the power of coming together as a community. As the ceremony concluded, Amelia was asked to say a few words. She stepped forward, her voice small but clear as she addressed the crowd. She spoke from her heart, with the simple wisdom of a child, about the importance of being kind, of seeing the good in others, and of never underestimating the impact that one person can have. Her words touched everyone present, serving as a powerful reminder of why they had all come together. As Amelia finished speaking, the crowd erupted in applause, many wiping tears from their eyes. In that moment, the true magnitude of what had been accomplished in Maplewood became clear. A town had been transformed, lives had been changed, and it had all started with a little girl and her sandwich. The story of Maplewood's transformation didn't end there. It continued to evolve and grow, touching more lives and inspiring other communities. Visitors from neighboring towns and even from across the state came to see what had been accomplished, eager to learn how they could foster the same spirit of kindness and community in their own areas. The media picked up on the story, sharing it far and wide. Maplewood became known as the Kindness Town, a place where community spirit and compassion were woven into the very fabric of daily life. The town's approach to social issues and community building became a case study for sociologists and urban planners, who sought to understand and replicate the positive changes that had occurred. As Amelia grew older, she remained at the heart of the town's ongoing transformation. Her innate kindness and compassion continued to inspire those around her. In middle school, she started a peer mentoring program, pairing older students with younger ones to provide support and guidance. The program was so successful that it was soon adopted by other schools in the district. Tanya, inspired by the changes she had witnessed, decided to pursue her long-held dream of opening her own restaurant. With the support of the community, she was able to secure a loan and transform a vacant storefront into a warm, welcoming eatery. She named it Amelia's Place, in honor of her daughter and the kindness that had transformed their town. The restaurant quickly became a popular gathering spot, known for its good food and inclusive atmosphere. Officer Baker, approaching retirement, found himself looking back on his career with a new perspective. The changes in Maplewood had reignited his passion for police work and community service. He decided to delay his retirement to help implement similar community-oriented policing strategies in other towns across the state. Officer Chen, with Baker's mentorship, rose through the ranks to become Maplewood's first female police chief, continuing to build on the foundation of trust and cooperation that had been established. Ms. Thompson's approach to teaching, emphasizing empathy and kindness alongside academic achievement, gained recognition beyond Maplewood. She was invited to speak at educational conferences, sharing the story of how a simple act of kindness had transformed not just her classroom, but an entire community. Her methods were studied and adopted by teachers across the country, sparking a movement towards more compassionate, community-oriented education. Robert, once homeless and hopeless, became a symbol of resilience and second chances. He started a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping homeless individuals reintegrate into society. His personal experiences and the support he received from the Maplewood community made him uniquely qualified to understand and address the complex issues surrounding homelessness. His organization partnered with local businesses to provide job training and employment opportunities, and with community members to offer mentorship and support. As the years passed, Maplewood continued to evolve. The annual Kindness Festival grew larger each year, attracting visitors from all over the country. It became a celebration, not just of Amelia's initial act of kindness, but of the countless acts of compassion and community spirit that had followed. The festival featured workshops on community building, talks by inspirational speakers, and opportunities for people to connect and share their own stories of kindness and transformation. The park where Amelia had first shared her sandwich with Robert became known as Kindness Park. It was redesigned to include a community garden where residents could grow fresh produce to share with those in need. A wall of kindness was erected where people could leave notes of encouragement or requests for help, fostering a continuous cycle of giving and receiving within the community. As Amelia entered high school, she found herself grappling with the legacy of her childhood act. While she remained committed to spreading kindness, she also felt the weight of expectations. There were times when she struggled, wondering if she could live up to the image of the little girl who changed a town. But with the support of her mother, her teachers, and the community she had helped to build, Amelia learned to navigate these pressures. She came to understand that true kindness wasn't about grand gestures or constant perfection, but about consistent, genuine efforts to make the world a little better each day. The impact of Maplewood's transformation began to ripple out beyond the town's borders. Neighboring communities, inspired by what they saw, began to implement their own kindness initiatives. A network of kindness towns began to form, with Maplewood at its heart. These towns shared resources, ideas, and support, creating a growing movement of community-centered, compassion-driven governance. As Amelia's high school graduation approached, the town once again came together to celebrate. But this time, it wasn't just about Amelia. It was a celebration of how far they had all come, of the community they had built together. The graduation ceremony was held in Kindness Park, with the entire town invited to attend. During the ceremony, Amelia was asked to give a speech. As she stood at the podium, looking out at the faces of the people who had been part of this incredible journey, she felt a surge of emotion. She spoke about the power of small actions, about how a single act of kindness could set off a chain reaction that could transform a community. She talked about the challenges they had faced and overcome together, and about the work that still lay ahead. But most of all, she spoke about gratitude. Gratitude for her mother, who had raised her to be kind and compassionate. Gratitude for her teachers, who had nurtured her growth and encouraged her to dream big. Gratitude for Officers Baker and Chen, who had shown her that law enforcement could be a force for positive change in a community. Gratitude for Robert, whose resilience and gratitude had touched so many lives. And gratitude for every member of the Maplewood community who had embraced the spirit of kindness and worked together to create something truly special. As Amelia concluded her speech, the applause was thunderous. But it wasn't just applause for her. It was a celebration of what they had all achieved together. In that moment, looking out at the sea of faces, black, white, young, old, rich, poor, Amelia saw the true power of kindness. She saw how it could break down barriers, build bridges, and create a community where everyone felt valued and included. The story of Maplewood and Amelia's sandwich continued to inspire long after that graduation day. It was told and retold in classrooms and community centers, in books and documentaries. It became a touchstone for people seeking to make a difference in their own communities, a reminder that change often starts with the smallest of actions. As Amelia prepared to leave for college, she knew that she would carry the lessons of Maplewood with her wherever she went. She had learned that kindness was not just a nice thing to do, but a powerful force for change. She had seen firsthand how it could transform lives, heal divisions, and build strong, resilient communities. And so, as she packed her bags and prepared to embark on the next chapter of her life, Amelia made a promise to herself. She would continue to spread kindness wherever she went, to look for opportunities to make a difference, no matter how small. Because she knew now, more than ever, that even the simplest act of compassion could spark a revolution of the heart. The legacy of Amelia's sandwich lived on in Maplewood and beyond. It served as a constant reminder that in a world that can often seem dark and divided, a single act of kindness can be the light that illuminates the path forward. It showed that community, compassion, and connection are not just lofty ideals, but achievable realities when people come together with open hearts and willing hands. As the years passed, Maplewood continued to evolve and grow, always with kindness at its core. The town became a beacon of hope, a living example of what was possible when people chose to see the humanity in one another and to act with compassion and empathy. And somewhere, in a small park in the heart of West Virginia, a plaque on a bench continued to tell the story of a little girl, a sandwich, and the ripple of kindness that changed a town and touched countless lives. It stood as a testament to the enduring power of small acts of kindness, and as an invitation to all who read it to carry that spirit forward in their own lives and communities. The story of Amelia and Maplewood didn't end there. It continued to unfold in countless ways, touching lives far beyond the borders of that small West Virginia town. As Amelia embarked on her college journey, she carried with her not just the lessons she had learned, but also a burning desire to continue making a difference in the world. At university, Amelia found herself drawn to studies in sociology and public policy. She wanted to understand the underlying structures that shaped communities and to learn how to create systemic change. Her experiences in Maplewood had shown her the power of grassroots movements, but she also recognized the need for larger, institutional changes to support and sustain community-driven initiatives. During her college years, Amelia became involved in various social justice organizations on campus. She organized food drives, volunteered at local shelters, and worked on campaigns to address issues like income inequality and racial discrimination. Her fellow students were drawn to her warmth, her passion, and her ability to inspire others to action. Back in Maplewood, the ripples of change continued to spread. The town had become a model for community-driven development, attracting attention from urban planners, sociologists, and policymakers from around the country. Delegations would visit regularly, eager to learn about the Maplewood model and how they could implement similar changes in their own communities. Tanya's restaurant, Amelia's Place, had become more than just a local eatery. It was a community hub, a place where people from all walks of life came together to share meals and stories. Tanya had implemented a pay-it-forward system, where customers could buy meals for those who couldn't afford them. The walls of the restaurant were covered with notes of gratitude and inspirational messages, a testament to the spirit of kindness that permeated the town. Officer Chen, now the police chief, had revolutionized the department's approach to community policing. The Maplewood Police Department became known for its innovative programs that focused on prevention and community building rather than just law enforcement. Crime rates in Maplewood had dropped significantly, and the relationship between the police and the community was stronger than ever. Robert's nonprofit organization had grown beyond Maplewood, establishing branches in neighboring towns and cities. His work in addressing homelessness and providing support for those trying to rebuild their lives had gained national recognition. He was often invited to speak at conferences and to advise policymakers on issues related to homelessness and community support systems. Ms. Thompson's approach to education had sparked a movement within the school system. The emphasis on kindness and community engagement had led to improved academic performance, reduced bullying, and a more positive school environment overall. The Maplewood School District became a case study in educational circles, with educators from around the country visiting to observe and learn. As Amelia approached her college graduation, she found herself at a crossroads. She had offers from prestigious think tanks and nonprofit organizations, all eager to harness her unique perspective and experience. But as she considered her options, she felt a pull back to Maplewood. She realized that while she had learned much during her time away, her heart still belonged to the community that had shaped her. Amelia decided to return to Maplewood, armed with her education and new perspectives. She wanted to take what she had learned and use it to help her hometown continue to grow and evolve. Upon her return, she was greeted with open arms, the community eager to see how their kindness ambassador had grown and changed. Working closely with the mayor and other community leaders, Amelia helped to develop new initiatives to address ongoing challenges in Maplewood. She focused on issues like affordable housing, sustainable development, and creating more opportunities for young people in the town. Her approach, which combined academic rigor with a deep understanding of the community's needs and values, proved highly effective. One of Amelia's key initiatives was the creation of a Kindness Corps, a volunteer organization that coordinated community service efforts across Maplewood and neighboring towns. The Kindness Corps organized everything from neighborhood cleanups to mentoring programs for at-risk youth. It provided a structure for the spirit of giving that had become such an integral part of life in Maplewood. As Amelia worked to implement these new programs, she often found herself reflecting on how far Maplewood had come. The town that had once been divided was now a shining example of what was possible when people came together with open hearts and a commitment to positive change. But she also knew that the work was never truly done. That kindness and community building were ongoing processes that required constant attention and care. The annual Kindness Festival had grown into a week-long event, drawing visitors from across the country and even internationally. It featured workshops on community building, talks by inspirational speakers, and opportunities for people to engage in acts of service. The festival had become a catalyst for change, with many visitors returning to their own communities inspired to implement similar initiatives. As the years passed, Amelia's role in Maplewood evolved. She became a respected community leader, known for her thoughtful approach to problem solving and her unwavering commitment to kindness and inclusion. She never forgot the lesson she had learned as a child, that even the smallest act of kindness could have far-reaching consequences. The story of Amelia's sandwich and the transformation of Maplewood became legend, told and retold in books, movies, and classrooms around the world. It served as a powerful reminder of the potential for positive change that exists in every community, waiting to be unleashed by acts of compassion and connection. As Amelia walked through Kindness Park, one crisp autumn day, much like the one when she had first shared her sandwich with Robert, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. She was grateful for the journey that had brought her and her community to this point, for the challenges they had overcome together, and for the bonds that had been forged through acts of kindness, both big and small. She paused at the bench where it had all begun, running her hand over the plaque that told the story of that fateful day. As she did, a young girl approached, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Are you Amelia?" the girl asked, her voice filled with awe. "The one who gave her sandwich to the homeless man?" Amelia smiled, kneeling down to the girl's level. "I am," she said. "But the real story isn't about me. It's about all of us and the power we have to make the world a little bit better every day." The girl nodded solemnly, seeming to grasp the weight of Amelia's words. "Can you tell me the story?" she asked. And so, as the autumn leaves fell around them, Amelia began to tell the tale once again. She spoke of kindness and compassion, of community and connection. She told of the challenges they had faced and the triumphs they had achieved together. And as she spoke, she saw in the young girl's eyes the same spark of understanding and determination that she had felt all those years ago. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over Kindness Park, Amelia knew that the story of Maplewood would continue to unfold. New challenges would arise, new opportunities for kindness would present themselves. But she also knew that as long as there were people willing to reach out to others with compassion and empathy, there would always be hope for a better tomorrow. The legacy of that simple act of sharing a sandwich had grown far beyond anything Amelia could have imagined as a child. It had transformed not just a town, but countless lives. It had sparked a movement that continued to grow and evolve, touching hearts and changing communities far and wide. As Amelia finished telling the story to the young girl, she saw a familiar twinkle in the child's eye, the same spark that had driven her own actions all those years ago. She knew then that the cycle would continue, that new generations would take up the mantle of kindness and carry it forward. And so, as the stars began to twinkle in the twilight sky, Amelia walked home, her heart full of hope for the future. She knew that as long as there were people willing to open their hearts and extend a hand to others, the ripple of kindness that had started in Maplewood would continue to spread, touching lives and transforming communities for years to come. The story of Amelia's sandwich and the transformation of Maplewood had become more than just a local legend. It had evolved into a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of compassion and community spirit. As word spread, Maplewood became a pilgrimage site of sorts for those seeking to create positive change in their own communities. Researchers from universities around the world came to study the Maplewood model. They examined how a simple act of kindness had catalyzed such profound social change, and how the community had sustained and built upon that initial spark. Their findings were published in academic journals and discussed in policy circles, contributing to a growing body of research on the importance of social cohesion and community-driven development. As Amelia continued her work in Maplewood, she never lost sight of the importance of everyday kindness. She made it a point to perform at least one random act of kindness each day, encouraging others to do the same. These small acts, helping a neighbor carry groceries, leaving an encouraging note for a coworker, or simply offering a smile to a stranger, kept the spirit of generosity alive in the community. The kindness core that Amelia had established became a model for similar organizations around the country. Its structure provided a framework for coordinating volunteer efforts and maximizing their impact. Other communities began to implement their own versions, creating a network of kindness that spanned across states and even countries. As Maplewood's reputation grew, it began to attract new residents, people who were drawn to the idea of living in a community that prioritized kindness and social connection. This influx brought new ideas and perspectives, further enriching the town's cultural tapestry. However, this growth also presented new challenges. As property values rose, there were concerns about maintaining affordability and ensuring that longtime residents weren't pushed out. Amelia and the town council worked tirelessly to implement policies that would preserve the town's inclusive nature while managing its growth responsibly. One of the initiatives they implemented was a community land trust, which helped to ensure that a portion of the town's housing remained affordable for low and middle-income families. They also established a newcomers welcome program, which paired new residents with longtime community members to help integrate them into the community and preserve Maplewood's unique culture. As the years passed, Amelia found herself taking on an increasingly prominent role in regional and even national discussions about community development and social policy. She was invited to speak at conferences, consulted on community building initiatives, and even testified before Congress about the importance of fostering strong, compassionate communities. But no matter how far her influence spread, Amelia always remained rooted in Maplewood. She understood that her effectiveness as an advocate for kindness and community building came from her continued connection to the place where it had all begun. One day, as Amelia was walking through town, she encountered a group of students from the local high school. They were engaged in a heated discussion about a recent controversy in the town, a debate over the allocation of resources for various community programs. Amelia paused to listen and soon found herself drawn into the conversation. The students were passionate and articulate, presenting various viewpoints on the issue. As she listened, Amelia was struck by how these young people embodied the spirit of thoughtful engagement that had become a hallmark of Maplewood. "You know," Amelia said, after listening for a while, "this reminds me of something I learned a long time ago. When we approach difficult issues with kindness and a willingness to understand each other, we often find solutions that benefit everyone." The students listened intently as Amelia shared her perspective, drawing on her years of experience in community building and conflict resolution. She encouraged them to consider all viewpoints, to approach the issue with empathy, and to look for creative solutions that could address multiple needs. As the discussion continued, Amelia was reminded of how far Maplewood had come. The town that had once been divided was now a place where young people felt empowered to engage in civic discourse, where differing opinions were respected, and where the community worked together to find solutions to complex problems. The conversation with the students sparked an idea in Amelia's mind. She realized that while Maplewood had made great strides, there was always room for growth and improvement. She decided to establish a youth council, giving the town's young people a formal voice in community decision-making processes. The Maplewood Youth Council quickly became a vital part of the town's governance structure. Young people brought fresh perspectives to long-standing issues, proposed innovative solutions, and helped to ensure that the town's policies and programs remained relevant to new generations. As news of the Youth Council spread, other towns began to implement similar programs. Amelia found herself traveling to neighboring communities, helping them to set up their own youth engagement initiatives. She saw this as an opportunity to spread the spirit of Maplewood even further, empowering young people across the region to become active participants in shaping their communities. Back in Maplewood, life continued to evolve. Tanya's restaurant, Amelia's Place, had become a landmark, known not just for its delicious food, but for its commitment to community service. Tanya had expanded the restaurant's Pay It Forward program, partnering with local farms to provide fresh, healthy meals to those in need. The restaurant had also become a training ground for aspiring chefs from disadvantaged backgrounds, giving them the skills and experience they needed to build successful careers in the culinary world. Officer Chen, now nearing retirement, had transformed the Maplewood Police Department into a model of community-oriented policing. Crime rates in the town were at historic lows, and the relationship between the police and the community was stronger than ever. Chen had implemented programs that focused on prevention and rehabilitation rather than punishment, working closely with social services to address the root causes of crime and social issues. Robert's nonprofit organization had grown into a nationwide network providing support and resources to homeless individuals across the country. He had become a respected voice in discussions about homelessness and poverty, advocating for policies that emphasize dignity, support, and opportunity for all members of society. Miss Thompson, though retired from teaching, remained active in the community. She had started a mentoring program that paired retirees with students, fostering intergenerational connections and providing valuable support and guidance to young people in the community. As Maplewood approached the 20th anniversary of Amelia's act of kindness, plans were made for a grand celebration. The town council decided to use this milestone as an opportunity not just to look back on how far they had come, but to look forward and set new goals for the future. Amelia was asked to give the keynote speech at the anniversary celebration. As she stood at the podium, looking out at the faces of her friends, neighbors, and community members, she felt a wave of emotion wash over her. 20 years ago, she began, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes, I was just a little girl with a sandwich. I didn't know then how that simple act would change my life and the life of our community. But standing here today, I am filled with gratitude for each and every one of you who has been part of this journey. She spoke about the challenges they had faced and overcome together, the bonds that had been forged, and the positive changes that had rippled out from Maplewood to touch communities far and wide. But she also spoke about the work that still lay ahead. Our journey is far from over, Amelia said. The world is still full of injustice, inequality, and division. But what we've built here in Maplewood gives me hope. It shows that when we lead with kindness, when we come together as a community, we have the power to create real and lasting change. As Amelia concluded her speech, the applause was deafening. But more than that, there was a palpable sense of renewed commitment in the air. The people of Maplewood were ready to take on new challenges, to continue spreading kindness, and to keep working towards a more just and compassionate world. The celebration continued long into the night, with music, dancing, and shared meals. People from all walks of life came together, united by their shared commitment to kindness and community. As the festivities wound down, Amelia found herself back at the bench where it had all begun. She sat down, running her hand over the now worn plaque that told the story of her childhood act of kindness. As she sat there, lost in thought, she felt a small hand on her shoulder. She looked up to see a young girl, no more than 8 years old, standing beside her. "Miss Amelia," the girl said, her voice filled with awe. "I want to be like you when I grow up. I want to make the world better." Amelia smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. "You don't have to wait until you grow up," she said gently. "You can start right now, with small acts of kindness. That's how it all begins." The girl nodded solemnly, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a small wrapped cookie. She held it out to Amelia. "Here," she said, "I want you to have this." As Amelia accepted the cookie, tears sprang to her eyes. In that moment, she saw the cycle beginning anew. The spirit of kindness that had transformed Maplewood was being passed on to a new generation. As she watched the little girl skip away, Amelia felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that as long as there were people willing to reach out to others with compassion and empathy, there would always be hope for a better tomorrow. The story of Maplewood, of a little girl and her sandwich, had become more than just a tale of personal kindness. It had grown into a powerful reminder of the change that is possible when people come together with open hearts and a commitment to making their community and the world a better place. As the stars twinkled overhead, Amelia made a silent promise to herself and to the community she loved. She would continue to work, to inspire, and to spread kindness in whatever way she could. For she knew that every act of compassion, no matter how small, had the potential to create ripples that could change the world. And so, as Maplewood slept, the spirit of kindness that had transformed a town continued to burn brightly. A beacon of hope in a world that sometimes seemed dark. The legacy of a little girl's simple act of sharing her sandwich lived on, touching hearts, changing lives, and reminding us all of the extraordinary power of ordinary kindness.